You know, we're usually taught to think of the 20th century's two world wars as completely separate, distinct events. But what if that's totally wrong? Today, we're going to dig into this really powerful idea that World War II wasn't a new war at all, but maybe just the second, and even bloodier act of a conflict that never really stopped.
Think about it. The history books, they draw this really clean line. World War I, 1914 to 1918. Then a 21-year break. Then World War II. But what if that line is just, an illusion? What if this was all one single devastating 30-year conflict?
And look, this isn't some fringe theory. There's a really compelling historical argument that says the very way the First War ended didn't create peace at all. Instead, it lit the fuse for the second. It literally draws a straight, unbroken line connecting the two.
Okay, so how exactly do we get from one war to the next? Well, the argument really boils down to this three-step chain reaction. First, you have a peace treaty that made nobody happy. Second, you get this dangerous ideology that grows right out of that dissatisfaction. And third, you see how a noble idea was twisted into a weapon, an excuse for war. All right, let's break this whole thing down.
So, first things first, we've got to look at how the Great War actually ended. Now, the whole point of a peace treaty is to create lasting stability, right? Well, the treaties that ended World War I, they did the exact opposite.
Okay, so you've got these treaties, right? The most famous one, of course, is the Treaty of Versailles. And for the countries that lost, they were seen as deeply, deeply unfair. Instead of healing the wounds of war, they just rubbed salt in them, creating this deep, simmering resentment and this powerful hunger for revenge.
And this anger, it wasn't just in one spot. Germany was obviously crushed by these war guilt clauses and reparations they could never possibly pay. But here's the kicker. Italy, even though they were on the winning side, felt totally betrayed, cheated out of land they'd been promised. So boom, suddenly you've got two powerful, angry nations just stewing right in the heart of Europe.
And you have to understand, this wasn't just some local squabble. This simmering anger in Germany and Italy threw a wrench into everything. It was like the whole New World Order was built on a foundation of sand, and it was really only a matter of time before the whole thing started to crumble.
So all of this instability, it just creates this power vacuum. And, something always rushes in to fill a vacuum. In this case, it was a new and really dangerous political idea that promised to bring back order and get revenge.
And that idea was totalitarianism. Basically, just think of it like this. The government has total control. Over everything. The economy, the media, your personal life. It's a system where you, the individual, exist to serve the state, not the other way around.
Now, an ideology like this doesn't just pop up out of thin air. It grew in the fertile soil of all that post-war chaos and anger. Leaders like Mussolini and Hitler came to power by promising one simple thing: to restore national pride by tearing up those treaties everyone hated. And when people are that desperate, they listen.
The connection here is it's undeniable. The cause? All that deep post-war discontent. The effect? The rise of these aggressive, totalitarian regimes. It's a straight line. One fed directly into the other. Without that simmering resentment from the bad peace deal, ideologies like fascism and Nazism, they just don't get off the ground.
And let's be absolutely crystal clear on this point. The rise of totalitarianism, which was born right out of that post-war anger, wasn't just a cause of the Second World War. You could argue it was the cause. The fuse was lit the moment the ink dried on the Treaty of Versailles.
But okay, there was one more piece to this puzzle, one more ingredient needed to really spark the explosion. And it was a seemingly positive idea that got corrupted and used as the ultimate excuse for conquest.
And that idea was something called self-determination. Now, in principle, it's a great concept. It was pushed by leaders like U.S. President Woodrow Wilson after World War I. The basic idea is that different groups of people, Poles, Czechs, you name it, should get to have their own countries and govern themselves. Sounds pretty good, right?
But, and here's the crazy twist, this noble idea had a really dark side nobody saw coming. It basically handed an aggressor like Hitler the perfect political cover, the very excuse he needed for his expansion.
So, how did he pull this off? Well, after World War I, millions of ethnic Germans were left living as minorities in brand new countries like Czechoslovakia and Poland. So Hitler used the principle of self-determination to his advantage. He'd claim, hey, I'm not conquering anyone, I'm just uniting all the German people under one flag. It was a brilliant and totally cynical piece of propaganda that the world just didn't know how to argue with.
So when you put all three of these pieces together, the picture becomes incredibly clear. You stop seeing two separate wars with a 20-year gap in between, and you start to see one long, single, unbroken story of conflict. So, let's recap. It's really a three-step path. First, a flawed peace deal creates massive resentment. Second, that resentment becomes a perfect breeding ground for a dangerous new ideology. And third, that ideology twists a noble idea to justify its aggression. That's the direct line from the end of the First War in 1918 to the invasion of Poland in 1939.
It really is an unbroken chain, with each link locking directly into the next. The Second World War didn't just come out of nowhere, it was almost the inevitable, tragic finale to all the unresolved business from the first one.
And you know, that really leaves us with a pretty sobering thought. Winning a war is one thing, but winning the peace, that's something else entirely. It forces us to ask this really tough question. If we fail to understand these connections, what does it truly take to create a peace that actually lasts?